All right. This is
Okay, I can get started off. This is the Summer Games Done Quick submissions for Gauntlet 7 Sorrows. We are running Xbox 360 one-player multi-controller race going on. On the left, we have Furby XP, and on the right, we have Boyo003. Would one of you like to take over now?
all right. I want to thank you all for watching, and there's a lot going on in the very beginning, so we're gonna just start this off in 3, 2, 1, go.
All right. So the first level, City Under Siege, is relatively straightforward. We're gonna see what Gauntlet 7 Sorrows is normally like, but pretty soon after, once we hit the later levels, we're gonna start breaking the game pretty significantly in this category. And that's because we're allowed to use multiple controllers, and we're gonna make a pretty full range of use out of that. So, level 1, mostly about picking up some of the gold that we're gonna need for some moves that we buy later. But after that, we're gonna get into some pretty wacky skips. Boyo, do you want to talk a little bit about like the history of this game and where it comes from?
Yeah, so this was a game that was developed by Midway. It was first talked about in February of 2004, and then in May of 2005, it was shown off at E3. Controversially, the two main developers, Josh Sawyer and John Romero, left the company shortly after July. We won't get into the weeds of it too much right now. Suffice it to say that this game was released in December of 2005, and unfortunately, it was not critically acclaimed.
Yeah, it kind of resulted in being a little bit of a flop. So this game got neglected for a long time, especially as a speed game. But very recently, a couple of us have picked it back up and found some really cool things. And we're actually about to see one of those really cool things. So City Under Siege was a great example for what this game normally looks like. But as we enter the second level called Dungeon Passage, we're going to start seeing the game break a little bit. So we have to normally destroy some generators to clear out these guards that are in our way. But abusing some multiplayer mechanics allows us to actually step over top of the guards. We can do this because anytime we try to spawn in another player, oh, it looks like I forgot to save my elves. That's okay, we'll be able to get the gold later. Anytime we spawn in a new player, they spawn in on top of the current player. And so we can abuse that to get ourselves a little bit of extra height sometimes, which lets us skip certain sections that we would normally have to clear objectives to get through. So that's a little bit of a time saver here. We see more advanced and more broken versions of this as we go on. We call this 1PMC for one player multi-controller. We're actually going to see that we use up to 4 controllers. So far we've seen the use of 2. We will introduce more controllers as we go along, making the strats a little bit more extravagant. But once we've done that quick little skip in the beginning, things are pretty straightforward. Now, I actually am missing some gold, so I'm going to have to do some contingency strats to pick up a little bit of extra gold on my route. But that's okay. Luckily, this category in general has a lot of flexibility because another small abuse of the multiplayer mechanics we can do is gathering bonus gold by dropping extra players in. Anytime you finish a level in multiplayer, one of the players will get bonus gold, so I can make sure that my primary character gets that whenever I need them to. So we're going to use that to try and get a little bit of extra money out of things here. There we go. And I'm going to save my character. We need to be saving our character because it's important to be able to pull them back in once we've unlocked crucial abilities for them. The main one that we're looking for Elf is an ability called Continental Assault. Continental Assault is one of the special moves. It costs 500 gold. And it was a little bit of an oversight in their design process to give Elf this move that does this big spread shot, because in theory, from a distance, it's just a decent move. But if you're close to something, you get to hit it with triple the damage, and that ends up adding up really fast. So a great use, great abuse of some of the mechanics that they added in this game. And as you're seeing,
It has a beard.
as you're gonna see soon, we're on level 3 now. It's called Plague Town. And Plague Town is the first boss level in this game. So this was one of the first major glitches that we found exploring Gauntlet 7 Sorrows. On this level, we're going to try to completely circumvent the boss that we normally have to fight, which will save us quite a bit of time. So before we get there, we have to clear some enemies, so we're going to be using Wizard to help us do that. It's going to increase the spawn rate, let us kill enemies a little bit faster. But once we get into this boss arena, we're going to see some setups that we're going to use that allow us to skip the Scarecrow boss. And I see that Boyo's getting the key here soon, so he will be showing that off very shortly. So the way this Scarecrow skip works is there's a cauldron of fire near the entrance of this fight, and so long as you can hit Scarecrow with the fire at a very specific point, it will cause him to melt into the floor and instantly die. It's not intended. He's actually just clipping through the collision. And this allows us to avoid the entire fight. It's possible that this was some kind of weird leftover mechanic. No one can really know. But it involves a couple button presses at some very specific timings, and then it allows us to skip it. So I'm going to focus on my timing real quick to see if I can get this. I see Boyo just got it too, which is good. And there we go. Double Scarecrow clips, which is awesome to see.
Huzzah!
Huzzah! So in order to do that, we have to do 2 button presses, one to clear the prompts and one to attack. And those need to be about 175 to 180 beats per minute apart from each other. I actually used to use a metronome in my runs just to time it, but a lot of us have practiced it.
Days.
Yeah, it was probably really fun to listen to when I was listening to a metronome for the whole cutscene. But yeah, a lot of us have gotten enough practice with that skip now that we can just kind of feel it out and do it pretty good, so that lets us skip that boss fight. I'm gonna run down. I gotta pick up a little extra gold. I lost some of the gold from level 1 because I didn't save my character, which is one of the crucial parts to this run, is we need the character to have the abilities and then to also save them, because that lets us pull that character back in whenever we want, so that we can abuse that Continental Assault. So, running towards the end of Plague Town, and we're going to be heading into a couple other levels that are also quite straightforward, not a whole lot of huge skips. Get through this portal real quick and see how much I'm at. Okay, we're real close to what I need, so that's good. This game has had an interesting recent history.
This is Furby.
Yes?
This is not anything related to us you playing, but just to let you know, do not save your splits.
Oh, thank you. Okay,
You're
yes.
on any percent right now.
Oh my goodness, you're right. I can actually just clear it. I don't need my splits for here. That's really just because my muscle memory will keep making me try to hit the button. So, thank you for pointing that out, yes. Yeah, this game has had a very interesting history. So, for many years, I mean, we mentioned how this game came out in 2005. It took until 2016 for us to start seeing some of the first speedruns of this game that really put some thought into what might be the best way to play it. Before 2016, a lot of runs were very basic. People were just kind of picking what seems like a random character. We aren't even really sure why, but they used to run with Valkyrie. But after a runner named Pote started running the game, he found some optimizations using Elf, who we've found to be the best character. So that's where we see kind of the birth of some of the basic strategies that we use. But it wasn't until early 2026 that this game really started to transform and change, and that's because a couple of runners have come together, me, Boyo, and Blue Screen, and found tons and tons of great optimizations. And all of these multi-controller things we're showing off here, all of those were found within just the past couple of months. A game that previously was thought to not really have any glitches at all has now kind of been completely broken because of some wacky things that we found. So, Boyo's a little bit ahead, so I'm imagining he's coming up pretty soon on the cutscene skip that we found recently. By positioning a character where the end portal is going to spawn, we are able to end the level during a cutscene, which saves a little bit of time. I am just going to pick a little bit of this up. I'm going to do it like this since I don't have Continental. And there we go. That skips that level. And so now we're moving on to Sunken Harbor. Boyo, do you want to talk about how this used to be the money level?
Oh, yeah. So Poe, when he was doing his runs way back in the day, he had fun little split names. And this level in particular was called Money, Money, Money because there's a lot of chests that have gold in it. And not only that, the gold in here is 50 gold as opposed to the 25 that you may have seen when we were picking it up in level 1.
Yeah, this level used to be probably the one of the most important as far as unlocking abilities go. But funny enough, thanks to some skips that Boyo's already started here, we can skip almost the entire level. There's a bit of curved collision over here on this rubble, and because this collision is curved, we're able to keep spawning characters in and dropping old ones out, and it allows us to walk over top of the rubble. Let me get my elf in. Oh, it doesn't want to. There it goes. And then that skips basically this entire level. Still a little bit of money we can pick up at the end if we want, but for the most part, we don't really have to interact with this level, which is a huge time save.
Yes, normally we have Continental Assault at this point, which is the only move that you actually need for one PMC.
Yeah. Yeah, in other categories we get some more moves because there's more of a use for them, but here we don't need them. And so now I have Continental as well, so we're all caught up on the strats there, and we're moving into Ancient Forest. Ancient Forest has a boss called the Twisted Man. Funny enough, the Twisted Man happens to be a large tree guy, and because of that, one of our runners, Blue Screen, got into the habit of calling him Groot. So we tend to call this the Groot boss. And Boyo's about to do what we call the Groot skip, which is where we skip over the barrier that we normally have to do a bunch of stuff to clear, and just pop ourselves right into the boss fight. Now, this is the first time we're actually going to see 3 controllers used. So we've used 2. I've mentioned 4. So here's 3. We're using 3. In order to get over this wall, we need a little more height than one character is going to get us. So we're going to spawn 2 characters in and try to walk over top of the wall, which will let us skip some of the objectives that are required. Normally, this is one of the longest levels in the run, but this turns it into one of the shortest. Alright, let's see if we can get this Groot skip real quick. There we go. That's this one, so we're just going to drop out these. Okay, now I'm also going to be using a strategy where I'm going to try to tank the fight with Valkyrie. This is something I like to do just to help with some of the difficult movesets that this boss can have. But Valkyrie doesn't quite want to go where I want her to. There we go. Gets a little extra damage in, but then also I can stand Valkyrie where I need her to be for a later trick, which is going to be another cutscene skip. So this is another level where we know where the end portal is going to be. So if we finish off the boss and we're standing in the correct spot, we can sometimes get a skip on the cutscene. And I'm going to be careful here because he has actually moved my Valkyrie. And there we go. Alright, I was able to get that cutscene skip there. Pretty fun boss, pretty cool tricks. For a bit, we're doing this as a two-controller route. But once we discovered that we can do that 3-controller skip, which was found by Blue Screen, we started adding the 3rd controller in, and then later on we're going to see why we've added the 4th controller in. But first we're going to tackle standing stones.
Shoutouts to Blue Screen 18, because they were the one that spent a lot of time working and learning and discovering a lot of these multi-controller clips. I remember back in the day, like when we first started, I say that like it's been a long time, but it's actually like June 22nd or July 22nd when these clips were first introduced. He was playing on emulator where all the characters were keybound to the same moveset. So he was controlling 4 players with the same key bindings.
Yeah, it was, at first we didn't even think that they were going to be strategies that we could really use because we couldn't really figure out how we would do that with our hands, but after a lot of practice with using multiple controllers, we were able to find good setups and strategies, so. Now we're in Standing Stones. This is kind of a notorious level for us. There's lots of objectives that also happen to be around lots of enemies, and they're going to try to interrupt us, so. For the first section here, we're going to use a wizard to defend our main character so that they can push these stones without getting interrupted. And then later on in this level, we're actually going to see the stone skip, which is probably the hardest trick that we have to do in the run. It allows us to skip a pretty major portion of the level and has gone through a couple different iterations in how we do it. Our latest iteration has a lot more consistency, but it's still definitely not an easy trick to pull off, so we're going to be running up to this this second set of stones. So we've just cleared one set of stones, and now we have to go clear another much larger set of stones, but doing so would take time and quite frankly be kind of annoying, and we've all experienced that pretty heavily with our other category, our new game any percent. So in the multi-controller category, we found a way to completely avoid doing so. It required us to solve a very unique problem for Gauntlet 7 Sorrows, and that's covering horizontal distance. When it comes to getting height, we can do that pretty good when we have to like climb something or anything like that. We can usually do that. But when it comes to covering like a gap forward, that's really hard for us because we don't have a jump button, or at least a proper jump button. But we were able to come up with some strategies, one that we typically call swap floating, to cover distances. So here we are climbing up this rock, and once we're at the top, we're going to try and cover this gap using the Valkyrie character. And as the Valkyrie is trying to cover the gap, she's not going to quite make it all the way. So we're going to pull in an extra warrior who's going to get that last little bit of distance for us. So it requires a very funky hand position and some interesting setups. And I'm going to go for it here. And there we go. That's the stone skip. It's definitely the hardest thing to do in the run. And that sets us up for the next level, which is Stone Golem. Boyo got it too. Okay, awesome. That was some clean stuff. That's a tough point in the run to get through.
Clean.
Congrats on both of you for getting that first try.
Thank you, thank you. Yeah, that's tough. So I'm very happy we were able to do that. Now I've elected. I'm not sure if Boyo, are you doing wizard strats on Stone Golem? Okay, cool. Yeah, we're gonna use wizard on this level. I love using wizard for this. He's just a little bit better and a little bit cleaner for this fight. So this is kind of a unique boss in Seven Sorrows where he's made of rocks and we can't actually damage him directly. So we need to do some funky stuff. There's these summoners on top of these pillars, and these summoners are what control the Stone Golem. So if we can get the Stone Golem to knock all these summoners off of their pillars, we can take care of the summoners, and then that takes out the Stone Golem. In order to do this a little bit faster, it can be helpful to bait some attacks out using some of Wizard's stuff. So Wizard has this little splash magic move that he can do, and doing that will hit the Stone Golem and cause him to do this stomp every time. It's one of the few ways we can actually force a specific attack from a boss. And that way we can clear off these summoners a little bit faster and a little easier, because his other attacks are a little bit slower than this one. So, Boyo, do you want to talk about how we get the wizards in the hole, in the pit in the middle that we're about to do?
Yeah, so I'm just gonna herd them all together, and ideally what will happen is if they're right next to each other and they don't collide when we mana blast, they'll all jump up in the air and fall right into the pit. You can get them all first try. Unfortunately, it did take me 2, but that's okay.
Yes, it's definitely a little tricky sometimes. One of the other reasons we like to use Wizard is you can sometimes clean up on that fight a little better if you miss some of them, so that helps. It's very interesting. These like pits are pretty common in this game, where you can knock enemies into them, and it's meant to be sort of like this instant kill. And it comes from a mechanic that they were gonna have that they didn't have. They didn't actually get into the game. Do you want to briefly talk about what this combat was supposed to look like, Boyo?
Yeah, so it was meant to be where you were able to throw your enemies. And unfortunately, that, alongside weapon drops and an actual proper inventory system, were all scrapped due to the fact that Midway had to get a game out at the end of the year of 2025, and every single game that they were producing at the time was running behind. And they're like, somebody's got to make a game and ship it by Christmas, and Gauntlet 7 Sorrows got the short end of the stick.
Yeah. Okay, so now, real quick, we are going to show off our first 4-player skips. So these are actually the only 4-player skips currently. But what we're doing here is we need a lot more height than normal in order to get over these walls. And so in order to get that height, we're going to pull in 3 characters all at once to just barely be able to walk over top of these walls. It causes us to have to do some pretty funky aerobics with our controllers and to position our hands in very funny ways. But it saves a ton of time because normally we have to take out a lot of enemies. It would be nice if we could do the stuff you've seen earlier with the co-op laddering in order to get over these, where we like climb slowly. But unfortunately, co-op laddering requires something that we call sticky collision, where sometimes you can stick to walls if you keep walking towards them. And these walls just, unfortunately, they're not sticky enough in order to do that, so instead we have to get a little more creative, which lets us do some of these really cool tricks. I'm just going to pull in my elf before finishing the level now. And that is, that's how we do Imperial City. This used to be a very difficult level to do, and it's still pretty tough. These tricks we're doing are not, like, the easiest, but we've been able to make it a lot more consistent by having a lot of ways to avoid enemies, and enemies tend to be the one thing that really slows our runs down, so... So now another section here, this is Imperial Palace, and this is a pretty straightforward level. There's going to be some small quirky skips that we can do a little bit later, but this is one of those points in the run where we get to kind of take a breath, take a little break. Some pretty standard stuff with just destroying generators and pulling levers, which is pretty common in this game. They didn't end up getting a whole lot of different types of objectives in this game, and that's likely because of the rushed development cycle. And so you're going to see a lot of levers, you're going to see a lot of magical keys, and you're going to see a lot of pushing stuff. Those are like the main things we do throughout Gauntlet 7 Sorrows. There's some unique objectives a little later in the game which can be pretty cool, but yeah, ultimately they ended up recycling a lot of stuff, probably because they only had, I think, about a year or so to make this game.
Yeah, close to a year and a half, and taking into account the 2 major developers dropped out 6 months before its release, they probably were scrambling toward the end just to get this game out, which is unfortunate because they had a lot of really cool things that they wanted to add into it. At the time, in 2005, Midway was trying to make their games more mature. So this game was intended to be a mature version of Gauntlet. But then once new management came into play, they decided that this should be instead a rated T game. because most people assume Gauntlet as a family game.
Yeah, it was an interesting pivot for them to try to make, and I think a lot of Gauntlet fans were really excited for it. So seeing them not quite deliver on all of that is a bit of a bummer. So what you just saw happen there was a little bucket skip. We're able to climb over some buckets to save some time. And then now I'm going to skip this door like that. So that door happens, normally we have to open up a lever thing, and then it like a cutscene plays, the door lowers. But the door happens to be a lot shorter than it looks. And so because there's no collision on the top half, we can add an extra character and just kick right over the door and skip that whole section. That's something that Blue Screen found quite a while ago. And now we're getting into Throne Room, which is a cool level. This was one of the biggest examples of co-op laddering that we have in the run. But because of that, it can be a bit of a killer on the wrists when you're trying to hold all of these controllers together with your hands, because we have only 2 of them as human beings. So we have to climb pretty high to get over this blue wall, and luckily it is sticky, so we can do that climbing using co-op laddering. And then once we're up here, we're going to make our way towards what is considered one of the biggest RNG checks of this run, and that's the Grand Magistrate boss fight. So there we go, just finished climbing over that, and I'm going to get my saved character ready so that I can pull them in. And we're going to use 2 characters so that we can defend the one trying to close these doors that we need to close in order to move on as a little safety thing. This level is probably one of the biggest run killers, but luckily for Gauntlet 7 Sorrows, a run killer loses you, 20 seconds at worst. So it's not too bad. A lot of contingency strats exist for these kinds of things, and we also luck out in that this game has very frequent spawn points. So a lot of times if we die or something, we only spawn just a little bit further back, and we just have to walk up a little further to make the distance we just lost. So it makes the runs a little bit more digestible. So now, fighting Grand Magistrate, we are going to really hope and pray that he does as many fireballs as possible, because that's one of the few moves that doesn't stun us. A lot of his other moves are going to push us back and stun us and knock us on the ground. And so I'm not getting the best luck here, but getting a couple fireballs, which is good. And I'm out of mana. We're going to have to just attack him a few times, see if we can get through him. And that's Grand Magistrate. So that's probably one of the more difficult bosses to fight, just because in order to get it really quickly, you need him to give you some pretty lucky movesets. But all in all, that wasn't too bad. A death or 2 is pretty normal there. We're noticing too, at this point, we sort of changed sceneries a couple times. We went from sort of this cityscape to this grassy area with the stones. Now we're back into this rich palace-y looking place. It seems like originally there were going to be different sections of the game that focus on the different characters, their stories, their lore, but a lot of that got cut. So we still see the remnants of that in the thematic sort of setup for a lot of these levels, but we don't actually get the lore that they intended to have. So the starting area was apparently where the warrior came from, and the grassy area with the standing stones, that was supposed to be for a lot of the wizard's lore, but we end up not seeing a lot of that except for in the cut content that we can see from when they had showcased the game before it came out. So now we're going to be moving into Imperial Dungeon. We're going to see another fun use of multiple controllers, and also another level where we kind of have a little bit of breathing room, a little bit of extra time, because this one's a little bit repetitive. So we are going to come up on the second section in the game that requires us to kill a bunch of enemies. The first one was on Plague Town. So we're going to do the same thing we did last time. We're going to use a wizard to help us gather enemies up a little bit, and this also increases the enemy spawn rate. So by doing this, we kind of fast track ourselves through getting the kill count that we need to get, because once we get enough kills, we can move on to the next section. So not only are we getting an increased spawn rate, but we're also able to pull these enemies together, which just saves a little bit of time of having to run around and chase them down. So a good time for us typically to like re-chat, take a break, drink a little water. But this was a strategy we more recently found after doing some co-op runs. We actually did the first proper co-op speed run of this game not too long ago, and while doing that we realized a couple of things, like, oh, we can actually increase enemy spawn rate by adding more players, so been able to work that into the regular runs as well. So I'm gonna drop this character out, and we're gonna pull in another wizard because we ran out of mana, and we're just gonna keep going with this strategy until we've taken out enough. And there we go, we have the path is clear. This level is also one of the times where we get to see the most cheese. And I don't really mean like we're cheesing the enemies, even though we definitely are. We get to see a lot of actual physical cheese on the ground, which is a weird quirk. Boyo, do you want to talk about where the cheese comes from?
So, originally for this game, when it was developed, there were meant to be health orbs on the ground, hearkening to a game that some people may not know. It's called Hunter the Reckoning. That being said, you were meant to use like a certain button combination in order to be able to pick up said orbs, but if you did not pick up those orbs in time, the orbs themselves would go into these generators here and would spawn death, which I think would have been a very fun mechanic to have for this game, but again, it was put on the cutting room floor for production purposes and release time.
Yeah, it was very interesting that in their decision to remove that mechanic, they also decided to change all of the health orbs into cheese. And so we have these giant cheese wedges that just kind of look a little goofy for how seriously toned this game is meant to be. And so we typically get pretty excited about cheese, especially anytime it saves us and keeps us from dying in a run that we don't want to die in. So the cheese is always exciting, and that's probably the biggest cheese level.
Yeah, and if I will say, it's one of the things that's consistent with all Gauntlet speedrunning, you are definitely under level when you play through the game. I think for this particular run, like the saved character will still be at level 1 or 2, where normally people that play this kind of more in a casual setting will be up to like 10 to level 15. It's very standard for Gauntlet speedruns for this.
Yeah, we definitely have to kind of lean into that glass cannon strategy, since we are typically going to be very, very weak, but sometimes it's helpful. So in this level, we're actually going to take some death warps. This is Dungeon Deeps. We're going to take some death warps, so we're going to die to hit some spawn points that are going to save us a little time, and I accidentally died a little too early, which is okay, because we're not too far away. But we do some things to try and make sure the best possible enemies spawn, because we want real strong enemies that'll allow us to take the death warps faster. And then once we have pulled these levers, we're able to intentionally take some deaths and save ourselves a little bit of time with backtracking. So we've done that there. In doing this, we also summon Death himself, who can sometimes help us with these. Funny little quirk of the game as well, the announcer will tell you when Death is there, so he will say that Death has appeared. But the way he says it kind of sounds like he's saying that Death has a beard. So we pretty frequently meme about that and joke about that. A lot of us like to talk about Death's beard. And it's one of the more hype moments of each of our runs to like get real excited every time Death comes in. And honestly, whilst he's meant to be one of the big antagonists here, he kind of helps us out a lot by helping us with some of these death warps. So he's more of an ally than anything in this situation.
Oh, absolutely.
So now we're running into a room here. This is actually a very interesting room. We need to kill these tall blue guys in order to get this gate to open. But historically, we had this issue with a glitch where the gate won't open. It turns out that happens if there's too many enemies in the level already loaded in. And for some reason, the trigger just doesn't happen to open the gate. So blue screen actually realized that, and so now we do some things to make sure that there's not too many enemies and we can open up that gate. And then this room here, we're supposed to destroy 9 generators, which takes a really long time, so we are going to keep spawning a character in, using the mana burst ability that we've used a little earlier, and destroy all of them at the same time. So a nice little trick that we can do since we're allowed to use multiple controllers in this category. Normally a room that takes quite a while and can be kind of risky. And then another long walking section. We're gonna have to walk through a bit of these corridors to make our way to the final boss for this level, so another time for us to take a little breather, analyze how we've been doing, collect our thoughts and feelings. And then we're going to be coming up on the troll fight. It was very aptly named because he does like to troll us quite a lot. He has 5 or 6 or 7 moves that he can do, and only one of them is really bad for us because there's one move that we don't really have anything we can do about it. There's nothing we can do to like avoid it or counterattack it or anything like that. So we really just hope he doesn't do that one move, and of course, he really likes to do that one move a lot. So we're going to cross our fingers, hope we get some good attacks, because if we do, we can block and counterattack them and get a lot of damage in. So luckily got a counterattack to start my fight, which is quite good. We also pick up a weapon at the back of this arena. Lets us do a little more damage. And there's that move, that big tennis-looking swing. That just knocks you away, and there's really nothing you can do to stop it.
What can we say? He's got a mean forehand.
He really does. And he's really hitting me with it quite a bit here, so hopefully we can finish him off soon, and there we go. So that's the troll fight. In this category, normally we pick up that weapon, and it's good for the rest of the run. We get this. That's the best weapon in the game. That's the final weapon upgrade. But unfortunately for this category, as soon as we get into this next level, we're going to have to say goodbye to that weapon because we need to start swapping our characters pretty soon. And without that weapon being saved, we're not going to get to use it anymore. But that's okay, because in this category, we also don't really need to use it anymore. So here we're going to be entering sort of a new biome, a new section of the world for Seven Sorrows. This was probably going to be a level or a set of levels that focused on the elves, since their color palettes tend to match up pretty well here, but we don't actually get to see any of that lore. I do personally really like how these levels look, though. This one and the next one, they're some of the prettiest levels, and the music is really cool too. Normally these have a lot of objectives. We have to pull all these levers and then lower bridges and things like that so that we can get to the end of the level. But we kind of figured eventually, why lower the bridge when we can just raise our characters? And so we're just gonna co-op ladder over top of this to get up on the bridge so that we don't have to pull any levers or do any side objectives. So once we get over, if we fall off there, we can get this over. There we go, that's looking pretty good. And then, after we've done that, we get to just drop right off this ledge. For some reason, there's no collision above the tiny little ledge that sits there, and one day the runner blue screen found out we can just kind of run right off that ledge if we spawn an extra character, so that saves quite a bit of time. Almost skips the entire level. And then all we have to do is pull the final lever, which spawns the portal. So gonna teleport and see what this level was meant to look like, which is going to this sort of separate cavernous room where we would pull all these levers, but we only have to do it one time instead of 3, which is really nice. Here we can
Oh,
see
yes.
right
I wanted to say there was a point where we would try to ladder on the second bridge, which you guys unfortunately don't get to see, but that was far too complicated. And then once we found out we could just, to coin a young term, yeet the character over the bridge, it ended up being much more successful.
It's
and
a
far
lot
more
easier.
satisfying.
Yeah, it's definitely a lot easier. The old strat for this level required us to do a lot of physical and mental gymnastics to figure out where to put the characters and how to deal with our controllers to get over this second bridge, but now we skip the whole thing, which is good. So we're gonna see a new and kind of unique way to gain some height here. Normally we ladder by standing on top of the other characters, but here we're gonna abuse the spawn logic where it's gonna want to spawn a character on top of Elf, but there's gonna be valid collision just a little bit higher, or actually it'll be a warrior. There's gonna be some valid collision just a little higher, and because of that, it will, oh, let me zoom my camera in, that's actually gonna break it there. There we go. It's gonna spawn us on top of this walkway, which just so happens to be near the end of the level. So this is, again, another level. We almost skipped the entire thing, and this was another skip that Blue Screen found. This was a huge time saver, because this is one of the longer levels. It also includes one of my favorite mechanics, which are these crystals. This is one of the unique mechanics that we don't see in other levels, where we have to activate all these crystals, but they're on a timer, so if you don't do it fast enough, it doesn't work. But here we only have to do the final set of crystals, which luckily is also one of the easier sets, so that helps us quite a bit.
Yes, one thing that I do have to remind myself when I get to this section is that you only actually have to go halfway up these stairs to activate it. Pressing the R button to activate it, you have a little bit of a wider range than you would normally think.
Yeah, it's very interesting. I wish everything that we activated worked that way, because it would help so much. But yeah, those ones luckily do work that way and saves us a little bit of stress and headaches. And then that's the second to last level, which means we are pushing right towards the end here. This is Caldera, the final boss. He's cool. I mean, he looks really cool. Unfortunately, again, probably because of how much they rushed the production of this game, we don't really fight him at all. Instead, we're going to pull a couple levers, activate some ballistas, which will do all the damage for us, and then that'll be kind of it for the big bad Caldera. It's probably a big bummer for anyone who casually played this game, got it on Christmas in 2005 or 6, and was really excited and realized there really isn't much of a final boss, but it's another one of those really quirky, fun silver linings for us where, as speedrunners, it means that our final level is not very stressful, and we can kind of take a breath, calm down, finish off the run, let the adrenaline kind of come down off of us a little bit, and then get our times. So it's a nice way to end a speedrun. Most games I've played, the final level is usually one of the most stressful, so it's very cool and a nice change of pace to have a not so stressful final boss. And we do also have some fun things that we get to do here. We're gonna try to abuse the spawn mechanics to prevent enemies from spawning at the end of the level, which will help us a little bit. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna try to get as many enemies stuck on this island as possible, and if I do it right and none of them follow me, which it looks like we're doing it, we won't get any enemy spawns in this final section where we have to do our favorite thing, pushing stones.
Now more stones.
Yes, more stones for some reason. They seem to just kind of copy and paste a few mechanics from earlier levels in this one, so it looks a little silly, but we gotta push a couple stones. We're seeing some enemies spawning, but so far these are all scripted spawns that are always gonna happen, so once we start pushing these stones, we'll see if any extra enemies will spawn, or if we'll just be on our own and be able to finish things off. So use a burst and pick up a little cheese. Ooh, it does look like I am getting the enemy spawns, so it can be a tough trick to do sometimes, because if even one enemy doesn't come with, or one enemy does come with us, then it won't work. So I'm gonna use a wizard to actually defend my main character here, so that the warrior can freely push the rest of these stones. And then I will actually finish the level with the wizard. Oh, well, the wizard died. So, can I drop one in? Yeah, let's just do it with him then. Caldera doesn't do much, but he definitely does do quite a bit of damage. So, deaths on this last level can sometimes happen, which isn't too bad of a loss. And there we go. That's time for me. And it looks like Boyo's just behind a little bit. Thanks for the GGs in chat. That was awesome. Yeah, the races on this game are quite fun. There's a lot of really tense moments with things like standing stones and the scarecrow clip, which can be tough and hard to do on the first try. But yeah, there we go. Awesome. So that is the race for 1PMC for Gauntlet 7 Sorrows.
That looked like a 44:04 for you, Furby.
Awesome. That's pretty good.
Yeah. So our plan is to hopefully have this race as an incentive for SGDQ 2026. I think having 2 players being able to execute with 4 controllers on the main stage would be a really fun thing for people all around the world to watch. And more importantly, as kind of I've had the pleasure of performing at SGDQ, but we've already had so many other Gauntlet games perform at the GDQ stage. I think it's time for Seven Sorrows to get their time in the spotlight. The narrative is just so good for it right now, having its renaissance in 2026. I hope the people of the GDQ committee will consider it. Furby, any closing remarks?
Yeah, I want to do a huge shout out to Blue Screen for finding a ton of the strats that we use. He's been a huge innovator in this category. And a big shout out to Boyo, my race partner here. He has been an incredible representative for the Gauntlet community. He's been very welcoming to people like me who are a little newer to it. This is the first Gauntlet game I've run, and it's been an incredibly fun experience to get to know everybody, to do all these runs together, getting to do these races, the co-op runs, everything. It's been awesome. So it's been a very special few months for me, and I'm super excited for continuing with it. We have some awesome new ideas and strategies and fun alterations on the run we want to be doing over the next few months, so I'm very excited.
All right. I want to thank you all for watching, and remember, keep playing. And cut.
Ta-da!